Hey, Doc Solo here, the director of Ka-Pow. And today I'm so excited to present to you guys part 2 of my Art2Art sit down with author of the Sleepover and the upcoming Deepwater Creek children's graphic novel coming from Penguin Random House, Mr. Michael Regina. And do yourself a favor, okay? Before we get started, do yourself a favor. Go check out part 1 if you have not done so. There are so many jewels and pearls of wisdom. That's the point of these Art2Art sessions. It's not just to tickle the algorithm and grow an audience. It's to provide real value to the aspiring creator and to help them better navigate today's creative landscape and to show them all the options available to them to help level up their skills in the pursuit of either self-publishing or traditional publishing or whatever the goals may be. Now, please keep in mind, this sit down, we really go deep into the weeds. I love the fact that Mr. Regina is so open and candid about his experiences and really what it takes to not only survive, but to thrive in today's creative landscape. You know, because admittedly, it looks so much different than it did when I started many years ago. And I'm personally reacquainting myself as I re-enter the literary and illustrative landscape as a self-published author, because again, I don't know it all. And this is what these sessions are for. Now, if you do go back and check out number 1, which I strongly suggest, keep in mind, the audio is horrible. My mic was revved up way too loud. And so there's a lot of peaking and artifacting on my part. But graciously and gratefully, that is not the case for my guest, because I'm not the point anyway. I'm just the host. It's really to highlight these incredible creatives that are willing to sit down and share some of their intimate knowledge and insight into their journeys and their careers to better equip you as you move forward. So without further ado, here's part 2 of my Art2Art sit down with artist, author extraordinaire, Mr. Michael Regina. Check it out. Hey, Ka-Pow fam. This is Doc Solo, the director of Ka-Pow, the Comic Art Academy, the real art school for real people with real lives, taught by real industry pros. And today, I am so excited. We are going to do part 2 of my sit down with the incredible author and illustrator, Michael Regina. We couldn't go too far into the actual questions that I had planned because we were just vibing. And I'm so excited to bring him back for a second sit down with Art2Art. And I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. And so stand by. We're about to enter part 2 with my sit down with author and artist Michael Regina. Hello, Mr. Regina. Good to see you again, sir.
Good morning. Hello.
You are like so mellow, man. You almost make me look hyper. It's good to see you. I hope everything's well with you. How are things over in your neck of the woods?
They're fine. You know, it's life. So it's never not without some level of drama, but overall, it's good. It's kind
of part of the contract, right?
Learning that life is just gonna life is a lesson. Like, you know, it's we will never see total peace on this side of glory.
This is true. This is true. As I've been parenting now 4 adults from millennial to Gen Z, they're having adult issues, and they're like, Dad, Mom, you guys never prepared us for this part. I'm like, listen, let me tell you something.
I'm not prepared for this part.
Life is a boxing match. You just get rest between rounds.
That's right. Yeah,
that's it. That's all you get. You get rest between rounds. Yeah. It's not you. It's forever boxing match.
And learning to accept that is like has been what I've been learning lately is like, it's just part of life, you know.
It's just part of life.
You can either beat you down or you can just roll with it, you know.
Just roll with it, you know. Don't fight it, you know. I'm like, you're blaming me for something my parents didn't do, and it's not possible. I've come to realize it's not possible to prepare you. No words do it justice.
Yep. We're all like, you just look at your kids and you're like, look, we're just trying to figure it out too, man.
We are.
We've just been around a little
they
longer.
Don't understand it. The gray is deceptive. I'm like, no, believe it or not, I'm still figuring it out.
I'm still trying to figure it out, man.
That wise old sage with all the answers, that's only in the movies and the picture books. That's right. It's not a real thing. Well, thank you so much for taking time out, man.
Yeah, you're wrong. But no, otherwise we're doing fine. It's just just some stresses of things I got to get taken care of, but nothing crazy.
It's life stuff, and that's something I really want to touch on as we move forward. We get a lot of inquiries and with potential students that I hate to be, as my kids sometimes call me, I hate to be the Mr. Dream Killer, right? And they come in with these very ostentatious, grandiose ideas of this comic art life, right? I actually created a T-shirt that's a circle and to show it's like I call it the death spiral. But they come in with these expectations, these uncalibrated expectations of what it means to be a working professional, and I feel that I do them a disservice if I'm not completely honest. And this oftentimes happens in the interview process because I think we live in the age where people expect, or they've been bought a bill of goods with the social zeitgeist of social media.
Yeah.
That you can get here in 7 easy steps or never have to XYZ again, or, those messages that are oftentimes nothing but disingenuous cash grabs. And so when they meet with us, it's like they think that that we have some type of secret sauce, right, or system, when really it's just tried and true principles. But what I want to talk to you about is, as a working professional, doing the thing but doing life as well. Can you shed some pearls to help these aspiring creatives kind of better gauge what lies ahead?
Sure. I was thinking about that this morning, actually. It was like, the reality of what this sort of industry is versus how do you make a living from it, all these sorts of things. Like, or the specific thing I was thinking about is that sort of the democratization of tools, like that you make online for everybody to see, like all this stuff. It's gotten so saturated with people creating good stuff that the money is just spread out a lot more, right? Like it's so they can afford to pay people less because they're just trying to keep up with all this stuff. So anyway, the reason I bring that up is, making an actual living in this sort of thing is really difficult. And to the point, like I've been candid and sharing with lots of folks and on my channel and stuff, like, I still hold a day job. I still have to fit this into the margins, but I'm professionally published, Right. So I think the thing I would encourage other people there is, like, if your goal is, I want to do this for a living, it's not a bad goal, but it is accepting that, like, that is a thing you can't control ultimately at the end of the day. All you can control is the work and getting the work done and doing it at a high quality and putting it and sharing it with the world. And I think once I accepted that as reality, I started getting way more productive and actually started achieving more because, I was actually putting things into the world, and instead of like just trying to find a way to make a buck or something, so the reality of it is that, you may have to have a day job for a long time and continue to make progress on your projects, like in your downtime, But I can get into that into whatever varying degree of it. But the reality is it's tough. Even if you achieve success, it's probably not life-altering, go home, quit your job kind of success. Like, the advances within the book industry are not, in my opinion, for the beginning author, a livable wage. Unless your livable wage is like borderline poverty level, or you've got a or you've got a, supportive partner or something like that, or you're obviously it depends on your situation, but you just have to kind of know that with some clarity. I was talking to my neighbor though about books and stuff, and it's like, but the reverse of this is that everything you make is basically like a lottery ticket, and so it could be nothing, but it could also be everything. And if something takes off, man, then you could find that success. It's just publishers and you are making a bet. They're saying, here's how much I can afford to pay you right now. But if we're both successful, you'll make a lot more, Right. And so I just kind of focus on like, okay, I'm going to make things. I'm going to put them into the world. We'll see what happens. And then make sure that my family isn't worrying about where the next meal is coming. So I have to kind of hold both down,
I love that. There's such wisdom in that I wish I could bottle it. You are actually all in a video that I am outlining right now for this channel. And you've touched on several things because I believe it's so important for people, aspiring creators, to kind of really understand the contract that they're signing when they commit to this, because it's a contract with yourself, right?
Yeah.
What are you, what are you going to get from this? And one of the things that you pointed on that's actually in my notes for the video I'm planning is you touched on the lottery ticket. I love that. I'm going to steal that. Just FYI, I'm going to steal that because that's brilliant. That's such a great metaphor, because it really is. It's a crapshoot. It's a crapshoot.
Yeah, you don't know.
You don't know. But to me, it speaks to a greater question. The video I'm doing is actually the working title is The Real AI Conversation, right? And I was talking to some exclusive writer friends of mine that they're not artists, they're writers, and I was telling them that the real conversation is not whether AI is going to take away jobs. That's what technology does, right? That's really what it does. It's to remove the human element, right? And it's a capitalistic corporate maneuver. It's not an altruistic one, right? Okay, it's usually self-serving. And not that I'm against it, it's just that I know it is for what it is. My dad worked at Ford Motor Company. I remember when they brought in the automations back in the 90s and all the layoffs, and it was happening everywhere, right? That's the blessing and the curse, the double-edged sword that is technology. And AI is no different. But what bothered me is what struck me was I saw a video from a guy. I'm going to watch it again. I'll send you the link if you're interested. Very creative, but he really posed the question, the position that we have it messed up as far as worrying about the economic virtues of art, because, and I'm paraphrasing, because art was never meant to be that, right? We've made it that. It was meant to be a tool of expression, of enjoyment, of escapism, and it has become so commercially viable that we've made it into a commodity, right? To be profited from. And so when we're having the conversation on, what does the future hold for artists? Well, my argument is, and I'm probably going a little too far in the video, but I'll post it anyway, is that we should go back to being artists, go back, embrace the art side of it. When we look at Michelangelo and the greats, they had patrons, and those aren't ever going anywhere, right? You know what I mean? But they became masters before they ever earned a dime. What are your thoughts on that?
Like on just focus on the craft and worry about the economics later, or is that
as it comes? Yeah. So let me give some context. Like for me, I'm sorry. Like for me, now that I'm rounding this lap, in my formative years, everyone thought that I was nuts because my first job offer was with DC Comics at the ripe old age of, I think, 24. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I turned them down. Because I had a mentor at the animation studio who there's another Art2Art video here with me talking to him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was at an animation studio for a reason. And he was at the time, he was a 20-year, tenured comic book professional, but he's working in an animation studio. And because I had that unique opportunity to actually be mentored by someone who knew how the sausage was made, knew what lay ahead, and he saw this young kid with some creative potential that definitely had grind. And he literally, he didn't try to persuade me. He just laid it out for me of what it looked like, right? And he knew my situation. At that time, I was married. I got married at 22. So I was married. I had 3 kids already, okay? And 1 on the way, okay? And so he was like, you might want to do some math, kid, right? And he just laid it out for me, you know? And so when I turned them down, even though I kept pursuing, it was for my own satisfaction, my own elevation in the craft, right? My own advancement. Yeah. It was, I knew that wasn't in the cards for me. I knew that just from this conversation, you know? And so
the DC route wasn't for you?
I knew it wasn't. The mainstream route wasn't for me because I wasn't willing to gamble. As you say, it's a gamble, right? And I'm looking at the odds, and the odds were like, hold up. I'm looking at the landscape. I'm seeing most guys, and I don't know if this is the case for you, but when we look at the landscape as a whole, even today, even in its decline, at that time in the 80s and 90s, when it was booming, most professionals, mid-level, high tier, most working professionals, most of them were single. And if they weren't single, they were married. And if they had a kid, it was probably only 1. You understand what I'm saying? Right? You know, and I started, he's single to this day. Right? But that was the trend. And he's like, kid, there's a reason for that. You know what I mean? You say they're not you, right? They're not you with 3 kids, you know?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's, whenever I consider the possibility of going like full time with my book stuff, I just accept that it would take like the money would have to be of the point where it's like, it's obvious that I should be not here anymore. Not not trying to swing the day job anymore, like where everyone would be looking at me going like, why are you still here? You know? Right. Because it's just, I mean, the hierarchy of my responsibilities are my family, you know, first, and then the books second. And the books have been tremendously, like, I guess I'm trying to articulate. I accepted a long time ago that success here did not mean it was my job or that I made a ton of money. It became, right? Did I finish a book? Did I get it done? Did I put it into the world? Did I share my vision with it? And then past that, it's like, it kind of leaves my control at that point, right? It goes into the world, and then the world's going to do with it what it wants. And it doesn't owe me anything, you know, like the world doesn't owe me anything. And if I can keep my expectations low, then, you know, self-publishing your own book can be, man, you lived your dreams out, you finished it, you shared it with the world, you know? But, you know, I mean, I would love to do it full time one day, but the math has to make sense. And, but I don't know, man, it's tough out there. And so the encouragement I just try to give people is, if you can't be happy unless you're doing it full time, I think you're in for a world of disheartened. You're going to be disheartened. But if you can say, I'm just going to focus on the craft, I'm going to make good things, I'm going to put them into the world, I'm going to see where it goes, you can achieve. Like, I'm an example of someone who still holds down a day job and has had a book contract for the last 5 books I made. I've made money from comics every single time. And I've made like good money from it, like to where like it helps our family, like it helped me buy a house, it helped me pay off debts. Like, but it's not enough for me to feel comfortable to go home and say, hey, you know, this is my full-time gig. But I would say that, especially if you're young, so like your students or whatever, the time there's sort of like a young man's game and an old man's game.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in my 20s and my 30s, the sort of like I'm working my tail off and I'm giving it everything I got and I'm going to grind at my craft, like that made sense in my 20s. And now that I'm into my 40s, it's kind of like, all right, now I'm not a young man no more. I lose my energy a lot faster. And so I'd say while you're young, really focus on your craft.
Yeah.
Like just get really good. There's a Steve Martin quote that says, be so good they can't ignore you. And if you can be so good they can't ignore you, you'll find work.
Absolutely.
How far you'll go, I have no idea. But think about it though, in our culture, this is what I think this is what I'm driving at and what I think we have to accept. There is so much content being made. How many things are a genuine cultural phenomenon these days? It's like Stranger Things is the last one.
Yeah.
And that was pushing 10 years ago.
Right.
I mean, there's things that come out, and I guess what I'm getting at is that in creative fields, it kind of has to be this sort of genuine phenomenon thing for you to like actually make a full blown sustainable living at it. Jake Parker, who is one of the flight guys and the flight comics guys and done a bunch of stuff.
SVA
he put it best. Yep. He's like, there is no healthy middle class of comic book creators.
Right.
It's either you're making so much money at it you can't see straight, or you're struggling.
Right.
It's just sort of the reality of it, And so I don't say all that to say you shouldn't make things. I just want people to be sober about the reality of it.
I'm in full agreement. Again, these are uncomfortable conversations that I've had to have with applicants, even at the risk of them not joining Ka-Pow, right?
Yeah. I know what you're signing up for, man.
You have to know if you agree to the contract, then that's a different story, but you have to read the fine print.
Now, I will say this, though. Mm-hmm. I think that you and I were talking just before the show. One of the things, though, I think is important to understand is that you are developing skills that can still earn you a living. And so I work, and it'll be skills and a living that you will enjoy. So, like, if your version of, like, the only way for me to be happy is I do this one thing, I would actually say you probably need to evaluate your life a little bit. Because work should not be the thing that makes you happy.
It should not. No.
Although, the book of Ecclesiastes says, enjoy the work of your hands. So I do think there is like you should enjoy your work.
Right.
But like I work in the financial industry. I came up through the phones. I did customer service. I did sales. But then along the way, I was like, hey, this is a big company with a lot of different opportunities. I'm also creative and I'm financially trained. I bet I could merge those. And I've spent the last 8 years working in a creative field within the company, designing websites and writing and honing the skills that I care about within my job. So I have found a way to take my training and turn it into a viable career within an industry I never would have considered, but it's still using that same skill set. So if you look at it like you're acquiring a set of skills that you can turn into labor, you can find meaningful, good work in a lot of different places. So it's not, comics are not the only way to earn a living given the skills you're developing. So
they're not. When all I can say is amen to that, because when as students traverse with Ka-Pow, and I've had these conversations privately, when they sit down with me, especially the ones that are kind of rounding the corner and completing the program, they always want to know what's next. And I start sharing with them. Now, you're talking about a guy that's always been industry adjacent. This is what I tell them. I've always been industry adjacent, right? It was just the core industry. The math wasn't mathing. Okay. One of my previous guests, he said before the show, he said, Solo, I was there when the editor chose you, because I was the first one out of the crew to break through that ceiling, right? And he said, if you stuck with it, you would have been one of the greats. And I won't go too far down in the, I don't do flattery. That's not even a humble brag. Mm-hmm. Those who know me know I'm not easily flattered. Mm-hmm. I look for the truth in the statement, right? That's how my brain mm-hmm. works. Okay. And I said, I really appreciate that sentiment. I said, but I have to disagree. I said, and it's not a question of me downing my competency or my ability. I said, but to your point, gambling. I'm not much of a gambler. I look at data. I look at information. I look at the landscape, right? And then I was like, what is the likelihood? That's a different conversation, okay, based on what I see, right? And so I'm very conservative in my estimations. More times than not, I'm extremely conservative in all of my estimations. And so I said, I don't think that would be the case. And I wasn't willing to gamble my family's security on it, right?
Yeah. You had different responsibilities, I
had different responsibilities. And even to that, what it's afforded me though, the skills, graphic design, I've worked for Fortune 500 companies, you know what I mean? As a freelancer, Ka-Pow, right? We're here on YouTube. I've been hired by YouTube. I have YouTube invoices, because of the skills. And I tell my students, develop the skills.
Develop good skills.
The opportunities will arise, right? Keep your ears to the ground, keep your nose down, and do the work. I'm going to do granted, it's going to be a clickbaitish video, but, that time I worked for YouTube, right? How did comic arts works for YouTube, whatever the time may be. Yes, clickbaitish, but really what it boils down to is preparation met opportunity. Yeah. Right? I didn't go looking for them. They inboxed me, and I thought it was spam. Yeah. I thought it was a joke, right? You know what I mean? They inboxed me. I could not have thought I couldn't have aimed at that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You understand? It was just the skills were ready at the right time.
I would recommend a book if
I'm writing. As soon as you recommend a book, I'm writing. So there we go.
Yeah. I would recommend for anyone who's, especially if you're young, trying to consider like where's your career going to go. That book I quoted, there's a book called So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. And he basically was graduating college and was like, I want to look at what makes a happy career. Like, what should you do? And what his findings were really interesting. He's like that the specifics of what you do don't matter as much as like your lifestyle choices, like the things that matter to you and moving in that direction. And that ultimately what you're trying to do is acquire mastery at a set of skills that you can use to leverage for a better lifestyle.
Right.
And so like, I'm trying to encapsulate it best, but it's like, when I kind of started thinking through that process for myself, I was like, okay, I have this financial background and I have artistry. I know there's work out there for me. I bet if I got into one of these positions, it would allow me to work from home more, blah, 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 like going down the whole line. And like it gave me a sense of autonomy. It gave me a career, but it was less like I must do this to be happy.
Right.
To me, the comics are like I'm living out my dream. I feel where I get to bring all of myself to a table and say like, here's me in its truest form. Like I'm going to share this with the world. We'll see where it goes. And what I'm really excited about as a creator is I've finished 2 books now through Penguin Random House.
That's amazing.
I'm in development on my next one. Mm-hmm. I sort of accepted that the pathway to success in comics was a real long runway, especially given my responsibilities and all this sort of stuff. I was like, this is just going to take a long time. And so I'm getting ready to enter into my second contract with, something. The first one was a 2-book deal, so it was all wrapped up in that. But the Sleepover has been a steady success. Like Good. It continues to sell at the same numbers for all these years. And then a new one comes out in August. There you go. And a new book comes out in August. And so what I'm interested in now was, okay, I've now done 5 books. I've paid my dues in one sense, right? Mm-hmm. What does that second contract look like? Like I've been I've been paid on my rookie deal.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
I'm like, I've gotten my rookie deal. Mm-hmm. What's my second contract look like? And then I might have a different perspective on the viability of it. I don't know, but we still have to, I still have to go, my responsibilities to my family. And so the questions I'm running through my head, just this, me being honest, is like, as I'm getting older, can I continue to sustain sort of the grind of, holding down two things? I don't know. That's right. It's mostly because like kids and stuff they really need my time and attention. They're at that age where it's like my presence really matters.
Oh, absolutely.
And I have to be fully engaged. It can't be, oh, dad's working all the time.
Right.
Which I've fought for. I don't try to do in general. I try to make sure I'm not working in a way that impedes them, but it's just your energy levels, as you get older, your energy levels start to become a little less,
listen, I say it all the time to my kids and to the people that I fortunately mentor, that when you're young, you push. When you're old, you pace.
Right? Yeah, that's where it's at.
And that's what
really, I'm feeling.
I'm at the pacing stage. I tell them, I said, I pushed in my 20s, working 2-3 jobs, law enforcement, then security and bodyguard work, and still leveling up my craft as time allowed. But I was a full-time father and a full-time husband. But I was young enough, strong enough, and the testosterone levels were higher, right? And I could push through. I could push through. Yeah. But now in my 50s, 8 grandkids later, it's pacing now, right? Yeah. It's like I've come to accept that. I'm still able to accomplish a lot because I take care of myself by the grace of God, but I'm aware of my mortality. It looks different. I'm sleeping a lot harder, right? You know what I'm saying? The joints are creaking.
You just start to go like exactly kind of to my point earlier. It's like the young man's game version of this is not as viable, and so now it's like, now that I'm on like that second contract thing, will it allow me to have a better pace but still produce? Because the sort of the grind of what made sense 7-8 years ago does not make as much sense anymore. Right.
Absolutely. I totally agree with it. Words of wisdom. but you're approaching it the right way, in my opinion. If like I said, I'm at the point now, like I said, it was my coming across your video that, it helped me pivot, right? Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, this is something that I'm pretty confident, with what I have in my lexicon, that I could go the traditional route, right, with some of my properties.
Yeah.
Something I had not considered because I was still thinking the younger man's game. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, but no, not. Now I'm an empty nester, for the most part. Mm-hmm. You dig what I'm saying? The grandkids visit. Right? My day is Ka-Pow, but the rest is mine. What I do with that. And so just knowing where you are at that stage of life is crucial. I think a lot of people across many professions, we see it in sports all the time, right? They don't know, we saw Michael Jordan do it, right? He went from the high flying game to the low post game in his latter career. You know what I'm saying? We see LeBron pivoting, where he's playing the post a lot more. You kind of got to know where you are at a stage, and it's not a slight, if anything, to your point. Once you've done the work, you put in the reps, you've proven yourself. Like I said, you just finished up your first deal. Okay, now you got cred. You've got the battle scars to show, and that conversation looks different now when we sit back at the table. You know what I mean?
Hopefully,
yeah.
Hopefully, it's a different set of discussions. Yeah. And I mean, but even then that it's going like, how do I continue to pace better? It's like, I don't think I'm going to be coloring the next book myself, which would be an interesting discussion because I hand watercolored the next book, and, I'm interested in whether or not the reaction to the watercolor becomes, this is what Michael's art looks like. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like where it becomes synonymous with my style. Mm-hmm. And so there becomes an expectation of like all my future books look similarly. Right. But then the reality of like, I can't do that every time. So we're probably going to have to hire a colorist, and just I'm trying to figure out
That
like
changes
what can
the
I give up.
economics and the whole. Yeah. Now you're talking a pipeline versus a one man shop, right?
Yeah, and I think it's going to be necessary because the next thing that I'm pitching is a series that we're hoping one will come out a year at least. And if I'm still holding a day job and everything, that's a heavy deadline schedule. So we're going to need some help in there. So that's something we're talking about with my agent at the moment.
I love that.
What can we take off my plate so I can focus on the work, on the writing and the drawing.
Right. I love that. Well, definitely keep me informed. I'll be holding you up in prayer because I'm sure that it's going to be, I know it's going to be good regardless. It's just funny. I was going through the sleepover again, and my granddaughter yesterday, she's like, G-Pot, are you going to let me have that book?
No.
She said, are you going to let me have the book? And I said, yes, I'll let you. I said, I'm talking to him again tomorrow. And after I talk to him, I said, you can have the book. Because I really liked it. So let's talk about the sleepover and your next book. Was it Deepwater?
Yeah, Deepwater Creek.
Deepwater Creek. Children's horror.
Yeah.
Right? Is that accurate? And the reason I'm asking that is because my granddaughter's very scary. She's like very timid, right? Very gentle. And she said, G-Pot, it's kind of scary, but it's good. Which, granted, we're talking about an 8-year-old, right? Trying to communicate how she feels about a thing. And so I'm reading between the lines. But in knowing her temperament, right, and her proclivities, the fact that she read it in one sitting, even her mom didn't know until yesterday. She's like, Dad, she read this? I'm like, yes. She sat there and read it in one sitting. And she's like, Harper, you read this? She was like, yeah, Ma, I read it like a month ago. And to me, that spoke volumes. It really did, as far as just you sticking the landing. Explain to me how that works. Children's horror fiction. What landed you there, and how do you make that work?
Well, I mean, horror has always been my favorite genre. I mean, I'm saying like since I've been 3. I was 3. Saw Jaws for the first time when I was a little kid and became obsessed with it. And I wouldn't have articulated it as horror, but I don't know that necessarily is, but just the idea of like scary and suspense has always been my favorite genre. And it was and then it was like Goosebumps coming out when I was in 5th grade, in this idea that like, you could actually tell a scary story with kids in mind. That seemed unique and original because everything else before that had been stuff I probably shouldn't have been watching as a young kid, and all these other things, and Alien and Aliens and all that stuff. But the emergence of like all ages graphic novels sort of made me go, I guess I'll put it this way. I saw an opening within this field of comics that no one was filling. That comics doesn't have its own R.L. Stine, its own Rod Serling, its own M. Night Shyamalan, And so these guys that I love because they're able to scare you, but they're not inappropriate, they're not gory, they're not gross. They tell meaningful stories. That suspense and scares does not equal gore and inappropriateness. It's about the way the pacing works and all these sorts of things. And that often the drama of scary things allows you the space to tell really deeply meaningful stories. Right. And because there's almost a given assumption of the supernatural in horror. So you can talk about big topics like God and faith and loss and but still couch it into this like very entertaining thing. So I just saw an opportunity to tell the kinds of stories that I love and do it in a way that everyone could enjoy it. It was really J.J. Abrams' movie Super 8, which I got a poster for right over here, that came out, and I was like, oh crap, that was amazing. Why am I not telling stories that feel like this. Right. And I think I going back to that skills thing, when that happened, I don't think I was the only person that had that realization. It was like me, the creator of Gravity Falls, the creators of Stranger Things, like all of us were like, whoa, there's an opportunity here, but I didn't have the skills and stuff in place to really execute on it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Adamsville came out. Adamsville was the creation out of that mm-hmm. feeling leaving Super 8, and it did fine. But all that to say, yeah, I don't know. I just saw an opportunity to tell the kinds of stories that I loved reading that just are not coming out. They don't exist. And so I was like, well, I'm going to go do that then. I'm going to go fill that void in the marketplace because I always think about when I go to the store, what's the kind of book that I would love to buy, but I can't because it doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of where I start, you know. But I don't know if you're looking to get more in the machinations of like, how do you pull off kids horror? Because I can certainly talk about that. But that was my thinking process. And it was me going like, I love stories that anybody can enjoy, right. And I love horror, and I would like to do that. You know, right. I'd like to see if that can be done in comics.
Right. Yeah, and I know that horror. Again, I want to have you on my other channel, The Christian Creative, because this is actually a panel discussion that I interrupted and inadvertently snatched the mic from the panelists that couldn't give I don't believe they were giving an adequate answer. But I would definitely like to dive into how that is executed in a way that is sincere, in a way that meets the burden of the genre, right? Mm-hmm. You know, while at the same time, you being a man of faith and some really solid core values, without compromising. And I think that is a tightrope act that many people don't fully appreciate. I do, because of the nature of Honor Studios, right? That is a muscle that is developed over years. I always believe that the highest levels of creativity are born out of restriction, right? But as artists, we inherently don't like restriction. Okay. Yeah. But it forces you to be creative. Like when we look at Hitchcock and Rod Serling, and you know, many of y'all, I'm aging myself here, but when we look at the age of censorship, right, how it spawned a level of cinematic and narrative creativity that, in my opinion, is yet to be surpassed, because nothing beats the theater of the mind. Nothing gratuitous trumps that, right? And so we say horror because, to me, it's a very it's the low-hanging fruit for verbiage, right? But it's something more complex than that to me, right? It's this nuanced thing. Talk to the people about how you process that and navigate that.
Like navigating sort of like where the line is.
Yeah, like where the line is. Like, I know, like in horror, it's like you build up the tension. People think it's gore and slash and gratuitous, but it's and correct me if I'm wrong. You're more of an expert to me. I'm just now delving into it.
I think that's what people think, is that it's those things. That
it's those things, but it's like this tension and release. Tension, release. You know. Mm-hmm.
And well, I think there's so many great examples of people who've already done it that my sensibilities push me to examples of where it's already been done really well. Like if you watch the first Alien movie, there's a lot of restraint in that movie. Like there's some gore in it, in the chest burster scene. But beyond that, like you barely see the alien. You never see it really kill anybody. It just kind of is menacing. And the same thing with like Jaws. I mean, because the shark wasn't working, they had to do all these different things to make it work. And it worked, and it made the movie better. Right. But I mean, I think that my sensibilities have pushed me towards examples that have already done it so well that honestly, I don't find it to be that difficult. Yeah. Because like, I think, to me, it's just a decision. Like if your decision is like, I want to be bloody and gory and whatever, because that's what you enjoy, you're just going to do it. But the kinds of stories I love and the kinds of directors I love already exhibited that restraint. So in some ways it was just mimicry. So, like, I'm just like, they've already showed me how to do it. I'm just going to copy what they do,
Right.
And so, kind of like you were saying, that restraint, Rod Serling's The Twilight Zone, which that's my mug I'm drinking out of here. And, he's my favorite writer ever. And he was, trying to talk about big, important things that the censors wouldn't let him talk about directly. Yep. So he's like, well, I'll put it in the mouth of an alien and then everyone will hear what I'm trying to say, about prejudice or communism or whatever he was trying to talk about. And then, guys like, honestly, the real person who showed me how to do it was M. Night Shyamalan. Because his sort of first 4 movies, in particular, there is such a balance between drama and supernatural and scary. And he would talk about these huge topics. I mean, like, literally, I think the movie Signs and the movie The Village were the 2 that I saw in the theater that made me go, I can do this. Like, I can. Wow. This is like the mark that I'm aiming for, which is this. Feel however you want to feel about the movies, but I'm talking about the way I felt inside was like, you can tell really entertaining stories that are scary, heartfelt, have deep messages to them. And that's sort of like been the goal ever since, has been like, not copy him, but aim for that same watermark. If you can tell meaningful things that are not inappropriate, that even his movies, there's barely any cussing in it. There's hardly any.
They're very tame. Yes. Yeah.
And so hitting that mark is not super hard for me because my tastes are already driven that way. So it's, but the saying I have told, people who ask me about this or tell me that their kids read it and they're like, I thought they weren't going to, like your granddaughter, like, I didn't think my kids would be into it. Is like, I want the kids to feel like they're getting away with something, but parents to know that they're not.
Right.
Like there is a line that I'm going like all the way up to.
Right.
And then, actually, I can actually really articulate it. I don't want to hold back on my monster designs, the intensity of the villains in the story. Like, I want them to feel horrifying. But just before it's about to get scary or like too much, the camera cuts away or you don't see it. And so, like, even in my art style, you'll notice, like, I'll draw, like, the characters look cartoony. The environment looks very normal animation-y comic book. But when it gets to the monster, I heighten the detail. I heighten the intensity of the artwork. I try to make it look very different so that it communicates that scare.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And maybe this is an oversimplification, but really, you said it well. And I always try to break things down to their base parts. You are what you eat, and when you consume it and you find out how the recipe and the sausage is made, it does become second nature. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you know what you like, what works for you, what doesn't. I have somebody that I want you to meet. Harper.
Oh, yeah.
This is over here.
Hey, Harper.
This is Mr. Regina. Say hello.
Hi.
Hi.
He's the one who created the book that you like so much.
Thank you. He's told me so much about how you like it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so glad you liked it.
Speaking to the mic, baby.
Oh,
Thank you for making this book.
Thank you for reading it and liking it.
He said, thank you for reading it. All right, go and get ready for school. She's getting ready for school. I wanted to catch her before she left.
Nice. That's awesome.
But no, that speaks volumes to me because I'm always reading the room, right? I think as creators, we always have to read the room, whether it's the room that we live in or the marketplace in general, right? I think a lot of times aspiring creators suffer from their reach extending their grasp, right? They try to be too clever. They try to be too over the top. They try to be too avant-garde, right? When those that have done it and done it exceptionally well, or at the very least skillfully, they realize, keep it simple, stupid. You know what I mean? It's not that hard. It's not rocket science. It's been done. The formula's been laid out for you. All you got to really do is follow it and then add your voice to it. Yeah. Right? Filter it through the lens of you. Right? Because no one can do you. Like, I'm about to do a commentary that it's about to, I know it's going to be probably a little bit divisive, but again, filling a space that I see that's not here on YouTube. On my studio channel, I'm doing a commentary on the movie Sinners, right? From on the Christian Creative. It's called Christian Creative Critiques. This will be my first one. And
nice.
And so it's basically Dusk Till Dawn, but in the Old South. I'm like, that's his voice, and he's trying to say something, right? And I'm not going to give it away, but when I saw it, being the cinephile that I am, right, I'm like, I knew immediately what it was, even though I didn't know what it was. I actually didn't know what the movie was about when I went to go see it. Okay, I intentionally stayed away from trailers and spoilers, right? And so,
I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard it's really good. So I'm debating on trying to make a theater trip.
It's amazing. Yeah. I saw it for the second time on Sunday, so I could take notes. That's kind of my cadence. Is first time I experience it as a fan, just as a moviegoer. If I like it and something resonates with me, I go back and I study it to find out what hit and what the beats and what was said and what resonated, what stuck, what tricks and tools that they use to elicit this emotion of this response for me. Again, weird brain, right? And so that was the Sunday trip.
I get it.
Yeah.
With midnight movies, I mean, no joke. Like I would, he's an example that immediately comes to mind. Go to the theater and I saw The Village 4 times in the theater, and eventually it was like I was going in with like notebooks, trying to like, what is it about this?
What is it about it? Right. And if you're an aspiring creator, you're not weird if you're doing this. And if you're not doing this, you're doing yourself a disservice. Because these are, whatever it is you're into, whatever genre, comedy, whatever the case may be, they're master classes. Whether skip the critical reviews, right? Someone paid for it, they thought enough to invest in it. You're trying to get there, right? I tell people skip what the critics say. Rotten Tomatoes, it matters to a degree, but.
I like to know what I'm walking into to some degree.
Yeah, but, exactly. I want an overarching thing, but when all is said and done, if it's something that you enjoy, despite what the critics say, break it apart and find out why you enjoy it. What is it about it? It's not enough to just be a passive consumer. You can't afford that as a creator, right? I teach my students that all. You can't be a passive consumer. You have to be an intentional consumer of content.
What are we putting ourselves into? But it's or spending our time on. It's funny. Like I have friends that are like, I won't rewatch movies. Like I have creative friends that like I'll watch it once, I never watch it again, and I don't get that. Like I
don't understand. That.
If I love something, like I will rewatch it, but it is because I'm like it's already such a high watermark,
right?
And I'm always like, what about that thing,
right?
Makes me. I'd rather watch something I know is a masterpiece. Right. Again and again, or then keep taking chances on content that I know is not very good.
Absolutely. And the second, third time you're coming, now you're a student. The first time, you're a consumer.
Yeah, you're just consuming it.
You're just consuming.
Which you should be,
And which is what you should be. Yeah.
Yep. Kazu Kibuishi often would say that. He's like, the first time. He's like, you don't really. I can't remember who he said. It wasn't him who quoted this. Somebody else said it to him. He's like, the first time you never really know a movie until you've seen it twice.
Right.
Like I can't tell you the number like of things that I hated the first time I saw it and loved the more I like. Just something about it will stick with me, and I'm like, I didn't like this, but there's something there.
Right.
It, like the movie Unbreakable is an example. Going back to M. Night Shyamalan. I mean, I remember leaving the movie theater being angry. Like I was like, that was awful. And then I
love
got it on DVD for some reason I still bought the DVD when it came out, and I was like, why am I buying this? I hated this movie. Right. And it was actually watching him in the behind the scenes. You got to remember, this was before comic book movies were a thing.
Right.
And he was basically
True.
like, I wanted to make a comic book movie. And I was like, holy crap. It's the origin story of Superman. And for whatever reason, I didn't get that in the movie theater. Right. But when I think the marketing for that movie was terrible. And that's probably why.
It was
it
really
set
bad.
me up for one thing. Mm-hmm. But once I knew that's what his intentions were and that the whole movie is the first act of a superhero story, a person discovering they're a superhero, man, I was like, this movie's brilliant. But it took me... So it's also okay to revisit something that you didn't like all that much.
I was going to say that.
For example...
You beat me to it.
For example...
Yep.
For example, I just went and rewatched the prequel Star Wars movies.
Okay.
Because we went and saw Revenge of the Sith in the movie theater last night. Some friends and I all went. And I do not like the Star Wars prequels. Not because... I don't want to get too much into the Star Wars debate because there's a lot of opinions on it, but I always said like they're fine. They're a fine story, but they just kind of don't feel like Star Wars to me. But it was taking my son to see Revenge of the Sith. He had never seen any of the prequels, so I was like, well, we should probably watch 1 and 2 so that when you see Revenge of the Sith, which I really do like, I actually think it's a pretty solid movie, you're not completely lost on what the heck is going on here. And I rewatched all 3 in the last like 3 days, and I was like, these aren't as bad as I remember them being. Like they're not the original trilogy to me, but they're not as bad as I remember them feeling.
Right.
And so some time and distance and like appreciation, all that stuff is, you're being a student and being open to it, and also remembering that like other creators are just trying their best too.
Right. Don't
so
deify
them.
Some
grace. Like,
don't deify them. Yeah,
they're gonna make some great stuff, and they're gonna like. I will always hold the prequels up for this. Like George Lucas wanted to make his thing, and he went and made it. And he's kind of like, you love it, you hate it, I don't care. I made my thing. And
I made it. Yeah,
cool. You know, I'm not gonna hate you for it, brother. You go do your thing.
You can't. I mean, when you make something, again, another video preview, and I've come to appreciate it. Most people don't realize the agency and the significance of just making something. A study showed that people who actually accomplish a given goal of any kind, it's only like 7%. You're in the 7%. Yep. Okay, you're in elite air at that point. Now, and that's just the making something. We're not saying if it's good or marketable. We're just saying you made the widget. Okay, that already puts you in exceptional territory. Now, I say the viability, the marketability part of it, the cultural phenomenon, as you say, that's the 1 to 2%, right?
And that's the part that you can't ultimately control. But you got to be in the top 7% to even get into that 1%.
To even get into that, and so you got to. When I created War in Paradise, to date my only published comic, self-published. No aspirations whatsoever outside of making it. And that's the truth. Okay. I didn't even like it. A lot of people don't know that. And I go into some other channel. I didn't even like it as a body of work. Okay. Even now it's hard for me to look at it. Okay. It was created to be a means to an end to leverage, to get entry into a marketplace. But as a topic, to me, in my opinion, and I'm not being falsely humble, those who know me know he did not like it. I just created it to kind of break the ice, right?
Sure.
I didn't expect it to hit like it did. It was a gamble. To that point, I wasn't ready for it. I was not ready for it. Okay, I was not prepared. I didn't have a follow learned in business like I am now, and IP and licensing, and it was none of that. I just made the widget. Right.
Yeah.
And people liked the widget. Okay. And they, and so when I tell people, when I look at other people that have these profound bodies of work, I say at the same time, you still have a seat at the table because you made a thing. You know, I remember the first investors that I talked to.
Yeah. You put yourself in there. Yeah.
He said, and I didn't understand at the time. He's now, he became a mentor of mine, but at the time he was a potential investor. Right. And he said to me, he says, I know you don't understand. You don't get it. He says, but you already establish yourself. I'm sitting at dinner with a multi-millionaire and a legit billionaire. And this is in early 2000s. Okay. cost what he was a billionaire then, right? He said, you made something. Do you know how big that is? And to me, I'm looking at the things that they built, but they were trying to drive home to me, no, kid, you actually made something and people liked it. Yeah. You know, that's why you're sitting here. You know, and I couldn't wrap my head around it because I'm looking at the Jim Lees, I'm looking at the John Burns, you know, the industry, and they have these volumes. I made one thing, 22 pages, 10 pages of narrative, the rest world building. That's it. It was only 10 pages of story. It was a thought, a blur. You understand? You know, sure. I don't exaggerate what it was, but I try to encourage our students, just make something. Make it.
Yeah, just make it.
Don't put your heart into it, but don't put too much onus on it. You know, just and let it be what it is, right? And then guess what? You move on to the next thing. You move on to the next thing, whatever that is. But at the very least, if you walk away and that's the only thing that you created, you're still in the top 7%.
That's right. Yeah.
93% of society can't sit at the table that you're sitting at.
Yep. And that's the only, and going back again to the beginning, like those are the things you can control.
Right.
So I can control the effort I put into a thing. And there is a level of like, you have to pay your dues.
Yeah.
And a lot of these comic creators, young or younger, like they want to develop the artistic skills, but not the skills it takes to manage a project from beginning to end.
Right.
And you have to develop that. Like, so I look at like the first Adamsville book and I go, this book is not an artistic achievement in my mind. Like the art could be way better. Right. In fact, the reason I haven't gotten it picked up by a publisher is because they're like, the art should be probably redrawn. I'm like, probably, you know, but to me, like, right. But the goal for me with that project was, can I finish a book? Can I finish like a book that looks like it deserves to be on a shelf?
Right.
And that meant going, I have to switch off the part of the perfectionist part of my brain,
right,
and turn on the part of my brain that goes like, we just have to deliver, you know?
Yes.
And once you've learned how to do that, like then you can eventually go like, okay, I put in all the work. I know how to get these things done. Now I'm going to focus on my craft. How do I get better at the actual like machinations of making a good comic? So like my last two books, The Sleepover and Deepwater Creek, those are probably the first time with any of my creative projects that I look and I feel like I didn't hold anything back because I had developed the skills that I needed to just finish, because like making a comic book page is hard. Making a 220 page graphic novel is really, really, really hard.
Yes. Yes.
And so if you don't know, if you got to develop that muscle in your brain so that when you're 100 pages in and you're staring 120 pages left to go, you're not ready to turn it off and quit. I mean, right. I'm being like real serious. It's a grind. It's a grind. And by the end, you're like, I'm exhausted, you know?
Right.
And so I've gotten to the point now that the work doesn't intimidate me. Like I know I can get it done. And now I can go, okay, I'm not intimidated by the scale. And now I'm just going to focus on making it look really good, you know, and making sure I can execute it at a really high level. Maybe that's, I don't know whether I would encourage everybody to do that, but what I do notice is like, if you're focusing to your point, like on finishing things, whatever that is, your skills are going to follow it because you're going to just naturally develop. But if you know what your end product goal is, like you want to make graphic novels, you should really try to make graphic novels.
Yeah.
You know, because you'll learn so much by finishing that first one. One, whether or not it's for you, because it may not be for you. And two, you'll learn like all these project management skills. It is a giant project.
It is.
Like, it's like having an animation. You're making an animated movie with like a skeleton crew of like one.
Yeah.
It's a ton of work, you know.
It's daunting to say the least. Yeah, it really is.
Not easy.
So you got to know what you're signing up for. But listen, I know you have a heart out here. Thank you so much for taking the time out. you drop some straight gems that hopefully if you're smart, you've watched to the end, viewer. If you're smart, you've watched to the end. We definitely gonna have to do this again, and if not here, definitely on my other channel, because I really want to get into the weeds on again the tightrope that we spoke about earlier, right? That is unique when you add the element of faith. That kind of changes everything, and people don't understand that. So thank you so much for your time. And listen, you guys, I'll drop all of his links. Check out his videos. He has a great channel that's growing. He's sharing his process. He's sharing his triumphs, his hurdles, the whole 9 yards. I'm so thankful that the algorithm dropped you in, and I'm like, who is this dude? Right? What is this? Right. And I definitely feel as if I found another brother, and so I'm grateful. Nothing else for this, nothing else. So thank you so much. And listen, you guys, as we always say here in closing, life is short. So live, love, and laugh as if it's your last day on earth, knowing that when all is said and done, all that will ever be remembered of you is the life you've lived, the lives you've touched, and the stories you've created. So what are you waiting for? Get to it. Talk to you later. Thanks again.
Bye.
Ka-Pow.